Hello again. So it's been pretty cool putting the video out. I heard from quite a few people I hadn't heard from in a while, just connecting and sharing what they've been up to and realizing that many of us are on a similar journey right now. There seems to be a lot of changes going on in the world and with people in particular. And it's been pretty cool to just connect and, realize you're not out there doing all this work by yourself. So I was listening to a podcast earlier in my car, and one of the things they brought up, which I feel like is very important to kind of think about, is the English language, which if you're watching this, you clearly know it. It is sometimes a language that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, some of the rules are very strange about it. But what I've noticed is the way we interpret words or meanings of words. And that has a lot to do with our basic understanding of what the definition of the word actually means. I mean, now we have access to so much information just at the fingertips of our phone, where before we didn't have that. We had to go the old school. I'm probably dating myself here when I say we had to look things up at the library via the Dewey Decimal System, which was not fun. But we didn't have connections to the type of information that we have now. So that's a good thing. And it's like with anything, there's two sides to everything. It can be positive, it can be negative. I guess it's the perspective that you have of it. But for me, what I am learning is I have created my own meanings or understandings of words. And I think everyone has done that to some degree. And what's interesting about that is when we're communicating as people to each other and we say a particular word, for example, if I say the word control, people have a different idea that comes to their mind based on what that means to them. And the thing that plays into that also is experiences that you've been through, things that you've lived in your life or been a part of. So if you come from a home or relationship that you had a very controlling spouse, for example, and you don't have any say about anything at all, when you go to work, you tend to actually be a little bit more of a controlling person because you don't have that at your home. And so it's two different ways to look at the same thing. But you take a person who has, I'll use my personal life as an example. So I mentioned earlier, if you watched my other video, that my mom was a alcoholic for most of my life. Luckily, she did get sober, but she struggled with it the whole time, But one of the things when she decided to become sober and take accountability and just kind of, get her life back on track, she took control of her life. And that's a positive way to look at that word, right? She was able to make changes in her life that were for her betterment, right? And take back some of the control she had probably given to other people over the time. And then you have myself, for example, my independent nature, just getting out there, living my life, not needing anything, just doing what I needed to do. Part of independence, sorry, it's a little bit windy out here. Part of independence, honestly, isn't the fact that you're being independent at all. It's that you are trying to control your life or others or control how something goes. And it masquerades in the form of what you call independence. Now, same holds true with anything, any word that you're wanting to use. Like, I'll give you another example from my life. And I've witnessed a lot of people with this issue. So let's just talk about the word father, for example, or dad. We know if we look in the dictionary, it'll tell us the definition of what a dad is. However, your idea of what you think a dad is going to be directly connects to your experiences with a dad, without a dad, or whatever your history has, you will attach that to it. So if you grew up in a household like me, in my last video I talked about my dad who passed away. He was actually my stepdad. And he was the one who was really mostly a part of my life. They got married when I was 14. And of course, he was here with me long after my mom was here. And the way I feel about him is every bit the actual definition of what I think a dad would have been had I understood based on my experience of, And then, of course, I go on in my life to create opportunities where my children also didn't have dads that were present for a many number of reasons. I'm not placing blame anywhere. It was the path that we chose, I guess, as spirits, souls to come here to learn the lessons we needed to learn to, evolve into, whatever it is we're supposed to be. So clearly the lessons we learned had some feelings and emotions, unresolved or resolved, whatever the case, attached to that actual word. So as I've been doing really deep shadow work and healing work and stuff like that, I'm noticing when I'm talking to somebody else that sometimes the way our conversation is interpreted by the other person has a lot to do with their own definition or interpretation of the words that you might be using. And so then it makes it really difficult to have very authentic conversations sometimes, because you get a person who, if you said something that's triggering somebody, they're responding to you as a person, not realizing that you have just said something that reminds them of a situation that is probably unhealed for them. Right. And so now they're in a defensive state as opposed to actually hearing what it was that you had to say. And maybe you're operating also from a space that is unhealed as well. And so that's why communication is sometimes so complicated for people. And so taking a moment to literally get back to the basics and really think about what meanings you've assigned to words that people use. And then when you're having a conversation with somebody or trying to connect, whether it's your family or a stranger or whatever, when you have a little bit more empathy for them, or you realize you really truly think about the fact that you don't know what that person is carrying around day to day. You don't know what state of mind they are. Because I can tell you one thing that I know about social media, and you know it too. You can make it look like anything you want. You can edit your pictures. You can make your videos look great. You can do whatever and put out this image of what you want people to think about you, because you are trying to put your best image forward and all of that. And that's totally acceptable and totally understandable. But guess what? All of us are doing it. All of us are doing it. And it makes it harder to be authentic when you're trying to really get to those levels. And nobody wants to have uncomfortable conversations, and nobody wants to be judged, and everybody wants to be accepted and loved and all of that. So we hide from other people some of the things that are actually going on with us. We'll hide that, we're putting on a smile, but maybe we don't even feel compatible with life that day. Maybe it's taking everything we have in us to get up and get in the shower and do something that gets you out of the house or doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, it is a struggle for some people to get out of bed. And it is a struggle. I'm having a struggle with this wind blowing all this hair I have everywhere. It's a struggle sometimes for people. And when you show up and you're at the grocery store and the checker says to you, "How's it going? I hope you're having a great day," or whatever, and you smile back, or worse, you're in a bad mood, so you're kind of shitty to the checker, and you don't realize that maybe something just happened in her life and it took every amount of energy she had to get up and get to that job and then you respond in that way, it's hurtful, it's hurtful, and she can't defend herself, and she can't say, hey, I could probably be a little bit more smiley and whatever, but she shouldn't have to say that, right? She should be able to be out there in the world and get some kindness from somebody. Like, the whole world would be in such a better state, right? I think back to a few years ago. Sorry, the sun is getting, I don't know, we're going to have to move, obviously, because the sun is getting crazy. I think back to a few years ago, and a lot of you, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, as a person who's been my friend or whatever. One of my sisters, my mom's oldest child, this is definitely not where I'm going to see. There's the sun is blaring in my eyes. So let me move my chair somewhere. I'm in my backyard because I'm a big fan of being outside all the time if I can be, because it's just so nice. But anyway, my oldest sister, Joyce, who I had a very interesting relationship with her over my life, because she grew up somewhere different with different parents, and she had a really rough childhood, and she was quite the only way to say it nicely is she didn't know how to handle her broken parts, man. She just, and she had a lot of things. And so during my younger years, we didn't really have much of a relationship, but as she got older, she came back around, and she was really close with our mom, and it allowed for us to have a relationship. Well, when our mom passed away, we were all there together, and my mom made me promise that I would be there for her, even if it was hard, that was my sister and we needed each other. And it was true, we did, and we developed a really close relationship after that. And it was just getting really good. My mom had died in 2009, but the universe wouldn't have it be that way for very long. So my sister was murdered, and very, very traumatic situation. And I went there to spend time with my niece and my nephew and family, and we tried to figure out what we were doing. Nobody knows how to handle a situation like that. You just don't. It was heartbreaking in so many levels, and I came back to work. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I came back to work, and I would literally step into my work role with a smile on my face, and everybody would come, and we talked about me hiding behind my career and becoming so great. Well, there were expectations that people had when they came to see Car Seat Mary and learn about strollers and car seats and whatever. There was an idea based on the word of mouth of people that had spent time working with me, and when they would send their friends, there were expectations, right? And I wanted to make sure that everybody had a really good experience, right? And so I would show up, I would check my emotions and my feelings at the door, and I would morph into this person that I needed to be. And some of my coworkers and my close friends were like, I didn't miss a beat. I did not miss a beat, man. I was as amazing as I ever was. And people would look at me and they're like, I don't understand how you are even functioning or helping these people or acting like everything is fine when what you've just been through is so terrible and horrific. And trust me, it was not processed grief on any emotion, but it's what I always do. I shove it down. I'll deal with it later, because I feel like if I deal with some of these hurtful things, I'll cry forever and never stop crying or be able to pull it together. So I just get busier, and I just kind of, hide from it, if you will. But it was the first time that I really, and I explained to a person who asked me, like, I don't know how you do it. And I said, well, the bottom line is, if I'm showing up at work, first of all, people don't pay me to come here and have my personal problems. And two, that's a person who's coming in this place is pregnant and they're expecting a baby, which is very overwhelming in itself. And that's not anybody else's burden. That's for me. That's my, my stuff that I need to work on. And I still have an obligation to mostly it was an expectation I had of myself. Let's be honest. No one expected me to act like terrible things didn't just happen. But I had those expectations of me. I didn't feel like that was right. And I wanted to show kindness to other people. But think about all of those people that are doing that same thing. And they're all doing it. They're out there just doing what they can do to get through that day, to do whatever they need to do. And I think if we can slow down enough to really be authentic and honest with ourselves and just examine for a minute what definitions and meanings you have assigned to certain things. Like a big one, for example, I will say, and this has been, part of my spiritual life, is the word God, for example, or Jesus, or whatever it is you believe in or don't believe in. I can tell you, like, I grew up with a mom who was raised in foster care and ultimately ended up in a convent for girls, a Catholic school. So you can imagine the different opportunities that I had to experience different belief systems and things, because my mom was consistently searching for whatever it was that she believed in, right? And where she fit. And so for a long time, as she was looking, people, there is a term called spiritual abuse, which I didn't even realize that was a thing until I went to go to the codependency retreat and realized there's so many forms of abuse that quite honestly are everyday ways that people behave, right? And so I started thinking about that, and I was like, wow, okay, that is how I really attach some negative meaning to God or spirituality or Jesus or whatever. And I was very angry for a long time. The dogmatic type of belief systems are very rigid. And now, as me sharing what I feel on a video, if someone's watching it, like, I'll apologize now if you don't connect with what I say. That is okay with me. I'm going to still respect what you do. And I am only honestly sharing from my own experience as a human and what I connect to. And so growing up, I felt very forced most of the time. Oh, well, if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. If you don't do that, it was all very fear-based control, right? And everybody who has a belief, their belief is right. And of course, you have to believe the way they believe, or you're wrong, or whatever. And it sends a really mixed message to a little kid, right? Because you're looking to your parents or your caregivers to really guide you and give you information. And if they don't have the information, then it's kind of like a free-for-all, which in a lot of ways I am really grateful, because I got to see a whole lot of different types of organized religion type things and stuff like that. And I never really connected on a deep level. And I am part Native American. And so I ended up somehow becoming invited to be part of a sweat lodge community. And I really learned a lot about myself, because I wasn't focusing on any one particular, guy in the sky that was judging me or whatever. I was really looking at the beauty of life that's inside of everything. And that's where I really started to identify with realizing that I had to find what that meant to me. What did that mean to me? Instead of literally hearing one of those words and already the walls come up of like, I don't want to hear what you have to say, because I don't feel like getting a whole lecture about, whatever it is. And so I think that sometimes that plays a role. You know, what meaning we've assigned to a word and what someone else has assigned to it and their idea, and then back and forth. And so we go in these circles. So the whole idea of why I wanted to even get on the video and just sort of talk about anything is, you know, for me, learning how to have proper listening boundaries and proper speaking boundaries. For example, yep, here goes the sun, constantly following me. The sun is following me, which I like, but not so good on the video, right? I think just because I go back and I watch these videos, and when I hear them, I don't remember anything I've said. So it's like I'm really fascinated with what's coming out of my authentic stream of thought when I'm just really trying to be intentional with what the work is that I am focusing on, what I'm doing. And communication is honestly a really big part of humanity and being alive and being functional and being happy and healthy and all of that. And so I would encourage you, if you're so inclined, to really just spend a little bit of time with yourself and take a little inventory, if you will. You can tell my 12-step days are popping out, like doing the inventory of just being honest about thinking about what these things mean to you. Words like faith, forgiveness, love, healing, you know, trauma, all of these main words that you hear from everyone. And don't just skim over it with the same meaning you've always just assigned to it, or someone else is assigned to it for you, but think about it for yourself. Like, what do those things mean to you? And what do you believe about yourself when it comes to those things? Because I can assure you that my idea of love when I was 20 years old is very different than my idea of what love means now. And there's so many small areas of each little word, like little subsections, you know, of unconditional love. And now the reality of it is we strive to love ourselves unconditionally and other people. But the reality of it is you have conditions on yourself. You have expectations on yourself, and you have rules and things, an internal compass that you follow. And sometimes you just do something because it's what you've always done. But is it really, honestly, what you should be doing? And why are you doing it that way? And is it time to maybe make a change and reevaluate what your definition of something is? And then maybe when you're communicating with someone else, like, be brave enough and willing to ask somebody those questions, because maybe no one's ever asked them, hey, what does love look like to you? What does forgiveness look like to you? What does the perfect life look like to you? Now, I know you can all, is there a such thing? And honestly, no, there's no such thing as perfect. And I will tell you, as a human, one of my biggest flaws is always doing something trying to make it perfect because you just felt like that's what you had to do. Who's the determiner of what's perfect and what isn't? I'm certainly no expert on what I think is perfect, and I've never met anybody else is that either. So taking back my own mental peace of mind and really thinking about it. There's a song on this is also giving away information about it. I am a huge Nothing More fan. So for those of you that are, yay. They have a song called Valhalla. And one of the main lines in it says, some people's minds just aren't worth changing. Some people's games just aren't worth playing. and my peace of mind isn't always worth saving. You know what? Pretty freaking true. Honestly, I have spent a lot of time trying to save my own peace of mind, thinking, oh, I'm being virtuous and this is the right way to be or whatever. And then I'm angry because the other person, doesn't feel the same way about it. I mean, me personally, I would not rob a bank or steal or anything like that. But doesn't mean that someone else doesn't have a moral compass that allows them to do that and they feel quite all right with it and they're fine. I can't hold other people to the same standard that I hold myself to. Now, can I be disappointed because they're that way? Yes. And can I protect my own self and who I connect with and how I interact with them? Absolutely. Absolutely, I can do that. But I first have to acknowledge it, and I first have to be willing to respect other people for their decisions. And you know what? Like we talked about in the last video, can't change anybody. I can only really do that for myself. And I can look at the words and the meanings and maybe the trauma or the triggers that have caused me to attach certain feelings and things to stuff that really doesn't need to be there anymore. So, and I can also be mindful that other people are doing it as well. And I can stay, what I like to call, stay in my own lane. I can give them a space to talk and I can give them an ear to listen. I do not have to climb into their story and fix it for them or solve it for them. I don't even have to offer advice, because guess what? Giving advice sometimes is a different form of control. Oh my God, you should do this or whatever. If you're not a big Brene Brown fan, I would highly watch her series on HBO called Atlas of the Heart. Such a good book. Such a good series. I learned in the one episode where they do some role